and welcome to our 7th episode of Cult Products. Kind of crazy saying that. It seems like we've done quite a few already. I'm Adam Yaya Durrant, one of the co-founders of Yaya.
And I'm Phil Keeley-Bond, the other co-founder of Yaya.
And today we're talking about sales. So one of the biggest and most important parts of kind of every single business, what's every single business needs. So yeah, we're going to kind of unpack that because we've had quite an interesting week this week doing our first kind of session with the guys in the cohort. Yeah, so first, before we get into all that kind of stuff, Phil, how are you?
Hot, I think, it's fair to say. Slightly anxious that anybody who's watching on YouTube at some point is going to see me actually melt into this sofa because I have had to close the windows to stop the. Weirdly, now I've got seagull noise outside of my window in central London after your seagull misadventures last week.
That is strange. They do get about going inland more, so be wary. They might be pecking on a window near you at some point. But no, it is very hot, and also it's been a celebratory week this week, hasn't it, Phil? Another year older and wiser.
Yes, I've slightly lost track of how old I actually am, which probably says something about how old I actually am. But yes, thank you. It was my birthday this week, and we celebrated by doing our first coaching call with the Cult Products beta group. How do you think that went?
I think it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I think the guys that were on the call were brilliant. I think, it was great to see such a diverse set of kind of ideas and, where they were at with their different propositions. And I really liked the way that everyone was kind of helping each other. It felt like it started feeling like a community was being born. It felt like people would go off and have conversations with each other, which I think we want to kind of encourage. And it was really good for first round. I thought it was brilliant, and it brought up a lot of stuff, which hence why we're kind of doing this call today around sales. But yeah, I thought it was brilliant for first go. What about yourself? What did you think?
I've really enjoyed it, and I think it was really interesting on a number of levels. I think one, just the power of that community element and curating that community really effectively, because I guess we're talking about our own. It is a beta program, and we are kind of in product development mode at the minute, but we're also kind of building out profiles of who our early adopter customers are likely to be and all of that kind of stuff. The community bit feels really even more integral now to what the product will end up being than I think it did before. The benefit of having people, being able to sort of sit back and let people give each other peer support during those coaching calls, I think was really, really cool. I think that also they feel really valuable, and certainly the feedback was that the people on them got a lot out of them. And also they're like really valuable for us because the kinds of questions that people are asking on those calls are obviously the kind of needs that we need to serve with the product. So it's a real invaluable feedback loop to, and hence doing this podcast today. One of the main themes that we talked about on the call was how do we get our first customers as a B2B tech startup? And we got into that. We heard from a couple of different people. It helped crystallize our own thinking and made it very clear that that's something that we should be talking about more and should be focusing on as a priority in the product roadmap.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting one, and one when you are a founder, you kind of see yourself as a specialist within an industry, within a sector. Mostly, you don't see yourself as a specialist in sales. We definitely didn't when we got into setting up Yaya. So, for me as a designer, I found that quite a kind of a bit of a daunting thought around getting how do I actually sell myself? How do I sell the brand? And we actually talked a lot about that, the kind of the connection of selling yourself or selling your product and kind of unpacking that. So it was super interesting. So Yeah, I think let's kind of try and unpack it and see if we can help and give some advice on that, because it is fundamentally like everything in business.
The first thing to say is that really, come back to that kind of mantra of everything in business is downstream of lead generation, and how important it is that you feel confident that you can actually sell a product before you jump too far down into actually kind of building it and designing it and all of those kinds of things. Without the confidence that you can generate revenue and you can get people interested, you really don't have a business. And funnily enough, I saw somebody who I used to work with, who actually, the very first app development project I was ever involved in, he was working for the company that we built that with at the time, JP. And I think he posted, he's doing his own podcast, and he posted on LinkedIn about this. I thought it was great, not just because the point was great, but also because he has this amazing hat on in the video, and he's Argentinian, and I think it might be an Argentinian hat, but I know it could be totally wrong and potentially quite offensive in saying that. So we should link to that video, because give credit where it's due. I thought this was a really great point. He was talking about waiting lists, and the very strong view that he gave was that your waiting list is not just about getting emails, but it's also about testing your value proposition. And he said something like, the inevitability of change is what you really have to understand. And I thought it was a really great point for a couple of reasons. I think when you talk about getting your first customers as a business, one of the things they talk about in Lean Startup and all the rest of those kind of places is like pre-marketing. And actually, what a brilliant opportunity to treat that pre-marketing as a prototype. Before you even start designing things as a prototype, putting a web page out there that asks people to sign up for an upcoming product based off a value proposition, and getting data back on how many people do and what the conversion rates are, and then tweaking and testing that value proposition and seeing what impact that has on the number of people who register, I think is a real amazing data source and opportunity to apply your kind of design mindset to acquiring product market fit, and knowing that you have confidence to be able to generate leads before you've even started to wireframe or create UI or any of those kind of things. And then you're kind of seeing it sequentially as, if you can test your proposition and get people to sign up, then it's worth you doing a bit more exploration on the actual design and interface and product stuff. And in those phases, you're both still in prototyping. And then once you've done the prototype testing for the product stuff, then you can move into development. And I think it's, that is one of, I think, the sort of the best ways to build confidence, but also tweak your proposition into something that you feel really confident in, and that has a downstream effect on what your product actually is. So I thought that what a cool way to to kind of kick off your business.
What's the kind of best avenues, do you think, to kind of start to like reach people? Because obviously, your network is like the key. Like we've always said that about ours. That's how we have got to the place that we have. That testing it with your network, is that kind of like the first place that you would go if you were trying to get the proposition, get feedback on the proposition? Like, how would you kind of approach that?
I think it really depends, honestly, on lots of different factors. But I think we'll talk a lot in the second half of this episode about selling to your own network and kind of focusing on people that you already know. I think you probably have to do that in parallel with looking a bit further afield and actually thinking about advertising and driving people towards landing pages where you have that value proposition, you have that conversion point to sign up to a waiting list, who you don't know. And there's an advantage to that as well, because you can test different audience personas and see who are the people who most likely convert and join the waiting list and all that kind of stuff. So it's, it's good kind of quant data stuff. But there's a cost to that. And if you're doing a cost benefit analysis of whether you should spend the money on advertising and building a waiting list or actual product development, I think it's worth actually spending some money on understanding if your value proposition actually is a thing people want to buy, because all of the money that you spend there pays dividends later on, because you don't build a product that people don't want, and you don't dedicate your life in kind of service to trying to get a startup off the ground that doesn't have the viability of actually being able to generate leads, given how important that is. And perhaps thinking about that kind of testing, value proposition testing, building waiting lists and that kind of stuff as part of the product development process, not as part of the marketing process, maybe a different way of thinking about it that kind of makes it easy to part with budget on advertising spend and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you listen to our previous podcasts on brand, you would know how important kind of getting that value proposition right is, and how much you should actually attention should put on that, because it is really fundamental to all those things in terms of getting the kind of brand visually right, in terms of getting the product right, and in terms of making sure that you're actually solving a real world problem. So yes, we will continually talk about value propositions and how integral they are to businesses starting. And I definitely agree, getting that nailed down to a point that's tested and feels like it's actually a needed thing is a smart move for sure.
And we should probably just take a pause here for people who've kind of just joined us for the first time in this episode and maybe aren't familiar with the term value proposition, because it is potentially a bit jargony. What we're really talking about there is a very simple articulation of what your product enables people to do. And it's called a value proposition because the value is the end result that they're able to achieve. Whereas a lot of people will focus on the product features that they have as an organization. Yeah. And so when we talk about testing and validating a value proposition this way, I think we're talking about quite a simple, potentially one-page landing page that you can push people to that says, our business helps these type of people to achieve this thing. That's the value by doing this thing. And that's where you talk about your sort of product features and what you actually do. But Adam, I wanted to ask you a question, because the question is going to be, do you actually need a brand, or how much of a brand do you actually need to be able to go to market and start trying to attract your first customers?
Interesting, isn't it? Because we were talking to the guys on this week in the cohort around how much do you actually need to have something, and how much are you kind of selling yourself? And essentially, like most of sales is really they buy from you. I think that's still an important integral thing. But one of the questions one of the guys had was they felt kind of uncomfortable with that thought, that idea of having to go out from being in a bigger organization that sat under a brand and being able to sell that brand is fine, but then having to then sell yourself as a different entity. So I think yes and no, and that's not probably the question. I think people buy from you, so I don't necessarily think you need to have an established brand, but psychologically, I think for some people it really helps because it's it slightly detaches you from it, so you're not so emotionally kind of connected to the thing you're selling, if that makes sense. I found particularly when we were selling Yaya, when under the blanket of Yaya and the brand, it became a lot easier because we were talking about it, as Yaya the entity rather than ourselves, and that just might be like the way that I'm wired in terms of like not really liking to kind of talk myself up and yada yada yada. So I found it easier to kind of detach like that. So I think it's down to the individual as well, like really, and what they feel more comfortable, more natural with. So I would say people still buy from you. That's always a thing, but like having a brand does help to create that kind of that comfort blanket for you in order to feel like potentially you can sell a bit better. Don't know if that answered that question for you there, Phil.
No, I think that's a really good point, and there's definitely some some psychology behind. Are you the face of a brand, or are you yourself the thing that you're selling that is important? And from a customer perspective as well, are you buying somebody, or are you buying a product and a brand and a company? And I think that is a valid point. I felt really conflicted summarizing what we talked about on the call. And now, when we started off, we didn't have a brand, we didn't have a website, we didn't even really have a name. It wasn't until probably about almost a year in that we became Yaya. Before that, we were called Adam and Phil's Good Design Company, which lasted up until the point one of our clients' finance departments got an invoice from us and said, "Is this real? Is this a joke? This is really unprofessional." And then we were kind of forced into a process of creating our own brand. But so we were able to sell a fair amount of work without having any of those things. And I think the takeaway from that is not, don't worry about having a brand or a website or a name or any of those kinds of things, because I really believe in the power of all of those things. I think the takeaway from that is, if you don't need it strategically to attract your first customers, get your first deployments of your technology, then you probably don't really need to worry about it too much. But that doesn't apply to everyone. And your business needs to assess whether it's going to be easier to attract your first customers with absolute clarity on who you are, what you do, how you present yourself to the world, and a repository online, a website where they can see all of that kind of stuff. And one thing I would say is, I think every business needs a value proposition, and it can change and tweak and all the rest of it. Not every business necessarily needs a logo or a website, but I think you do actually have to have clarity on who your customers are, what you're helping them to do, and how you help them to do it. And the same, we talked about this on the coaching call as well, the same applies to website. And the question was sort of asked about, do we need to have a really innovative, differentiated website, or can we, just go with a similar website to what the market is kind of used to? And that evolved into, do we kind of need a website at all? And again, I think the answer is, you have to ask the question, do you need a website at all? And if you do, what kind of website do you actually need? We've spoken about, doing waiting lists, and that can be a website on day one, potentially, coming soon, this product, this value proposition, sign up here. That might be your need. Your need might be to build a community. Your need might be just to build credibility, that you have a great founding team, and that you're looking for investment, and you've got a track record, and all of those kinds of things. It's definitely not as binary as saying just for the sake of being contrarian. No, you don't need a brand, you don't need a website, you don't need any of those things. You should just go out and sell. Or no, actually, you do need all of those things. Buy our product that tells you how to do those things. It's actually lead generation is the most important thing. Everything's downstream of that. What do you need to be able to start generating leads and to be able to start testing your proposition and tweaking it and all the rest of those kind of things, and to start attracting your customers and set that? We talk about hurdle races all the time. That's the hurdle that you've got to get over. Do what you need to do to get over that hurdle, and don't do any more than that, would be my take on that. We're going to go to a break in a second. I just want to do a wrap up, because I think we've spoken about a lot of sort of different concepts there. It'd be good to sort of bring it all together into what we think that practically means for people. But I think the earlier you are in your business, the less you know, and the more you know, the more you'll change. So I don't think you can see any of this stuff as being done at any point. I think you're just going to be saying, look, this is an initial hypothesis of what we think right now based on a load of assumptions, and we will refine it and get to a place where it works effectively as quickly as possible. Should you just kind of do vanilla stuff, or like just get something up? Yeah, sometimes it's about momentum. Sometimes it's about just actually, getting the ball rolling and getting some feedback on stuff. And, I think getting something up that you're not necessarily happy with isn't a terrible space to be, if it's a vehicle for you learning more stuff. However, I don't think you should go with something that's ultimately very vanilla and the same as everyone else, which just kind of belies a lack of strategic thought about how you differentiate and what your messaging is, and how it's different, and also visually how you stand out from everyone else. Okay, so just to sort of summarize this first section, then I think when you are looking at attracting your first customers to the business, one of the things we really recommend doing is doing some market testing and trying to approximate demand by putting up a waiting list, seeing that as part of the product development process, where you are taking your value proposition and testing it, learning, tweaking it, seeing what the impact is. Really, really important. And actually, the critical thing to establish really is whether you can generate leads as a business before you establish things like, does the user experience of this product make sense? Because that is kind of irrelevant if nobody's buying it. And therefore it is worth investing in advertising. Potentially more valuable than investing in actual product design and build. And also that we should really be thinking about, what do you need to get those first customers, when you're thinking about, do we need to have a certain type of website, a level of depth on the brand, any of those kind of things. And being led by your strategy in terms of how you approach both brand and website. And then the final thing is just appreciating that those things are going to change as you learn more. Anything else to add to that before we go to a break?
No, I think that's good. Let's have a little pause and then get some air, because it's very hot, and then crack on.
Yes, it is. Okay, cool.
Okay, so welcome back, guys. So this second part, we're going to kind of focus a bit more on people that we do know. So actually, kind of focusing on people within your network, because they are real vital to getting you off the ground, especially in the early days. So it's definitely something that we really kind of value and still do, our network and how it's kind of helped build our business. So it still doesn't take away from the fact that it's quite daunting, messaging people on LinkedIn or asking them to go for a coffee. It's definitely a new experience for most people starting out. So we're going to kind of open that up a little bit and talk about it. How did you feel about that, Phil, when we were kind of desperately looking through our LinkedIn social sites and seeing who we could reach out to, and what would the purpose of that be?
I think this is a difficult thing for a lot of founders, and it was definitely something that we spoke about when we did our coaching call this week, and actually where we started on the first thing people identified. There's a number of different transitions that people have to go through. One is from being an employee of a company to being the founder of their own thing and kind of mentally thinking about that. For a lot of people, they've never done sales before. And, I think becoming a salesperson, getting comfortable with not just delivering a thing, but actually convincing other people to pay money for it, that is difficult in terms of like the psychology of it. Plus, you're going to just be very inexperienced at it as well, and you're going to be learning how to do it as you're doing it, and it's going to feel very high stakes because you're probably going to be those initial opportunities to speak to people about potentially buying your product off you are going to be pretty like few and far between initially, potentially. So when we were talking about it, I definitely recognized a lot of the things that we went through when we started our business, and we had to go through all those kinds of things. One day we were quite happily working within a team in a business. The next day we were like, you have to eat what you kill, as they say. So the pressure's really on, and you also have to figure out how to run a sales meeting, how to create a proposal, how to invoice people, like lots of practical and also I guess like less practical things that you have to kind of learn on the job. So it's really interesting area, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely that kind of imposter syndrome, isn't it? Like, what am I doing? I'm just a designer. I don't know how to sell stuff. But I think, the one thing you don't have to do, you don't have to go and put on a shirt and tie and put on a suit and stuff. You just need to just be yourself and let your kind of knowledge come through on like the product that you're selling, rather than try and have any like flashy gizmos or anything like that. And talking about flashy gizmos, even like kind of slide decks and stuff like that. I mean, we've got a funny view on how I guess how impactful they are half the time, and we actually try and sell without putting a single bit of any slides in front of people, because we feel just like a much more kind of natural conversation is always better. But I guess it depends what you are selling. But yeah, no, it's definitely an area where I felt that I couldn't do it at the start. I just didn't see myself being like a salesperson. But now it's actually one of the most kind of rewarding and fun parts of what we do, to a degree. Obviously, like making sure we've got business and a healthy pipeline isn't fun, because that's just always it can be a bit painful. But the actual kind of winning work, I think, is I enjoy a lot more than I thought I was, and thought I would do. But yeah, it's an interesting kind of bridge you have to cross, and you have to cross it because you need to put food on the table and get the business to survive. But I think finding your own kind of way of doing it that is more like you feel comfortable with is the key, really. I mean, we've got kind of ways and approaches, but I think that definitely is what I'd say is a big kind of bit of advice.
I think my experience is that I hadn't ever sold any. I think maybe I had like sold a very small couple of days in between jobs to people to help as a consultant on marketing and things like that. But I never sold anything before. And my experience of starting the business and going through this transition was I just felt really inexperienced in it. I felt like this is a totally new thing that I haven't done before, and it's a skill that I currently haven't developed across the course of my career that I'm going to have to very quickly figure out, because this, we're going to need work to be able to make money and money to be able to buy food. So I better just kind of get on with it and throw myself into it. And I, as I tend to do with these things, did a load of reading and tried to, learn as much as possible about different frameworks and techniques and all of those kinds of things. And ultimately, I think where I got to with it is that the best way to do all this is to just listen and understand what people's challenges are, and then frame your solution, if it can help with those challenges, as the thing that will take away that pain. And I sort of feel it's not much more complicated than that, really. But I definitely started off. The reason I say not imposter syndrome is I didn't think, what am I doing here? I'm not a salesperson. I more thought, I don't know how to do this, and why would I? Haven't done it before. Now I need to learn how to do it. I've been really interested over the years watching you develop as a salesperson. I think maybe you've had a slightly different experience of it to me, but we got to a point where we were saying we need somebody to be head of sales, essentially, and that person naturally felt like it was you, which was an evolution over a couple of years. So I'm just interested in what you were kind of thinking and feeling as you were going through that process.
Yeah, it's funny because I think I was quite resistant to that idea, because I think you come in and you're like a specialist in a certain kind of subject matter, and you think, oh, I'm a designer, I'm not a salesperson, so what the hell am I? Why would I be interested in that? But I definitely felt going into that, and then kind of getting into the swing of it. And we've never been like a hard sell business, and I think learning from you and the way that we kind of approach things around just kind of listening and learning about the problems that our clients are facing and trying to offer up solutions or just guide them, I think has been a lot easier than just being chucking slides in, just telling them what we do all the time. So I think it makes it more kind of natural, and that's the only way that I can sell. So that's why I've enjoyed it a lot more. But yeah, as I say, I find it super fulfilling, and it is like a necessity, so we have to do it. But quite surprised that I was made head of sales in my own business. Didn't see that one coming for sure. But yeah, maybe my kind of year of traveling around Australia doing fundraising and chugging actually does show that it has made an impact in my future performance at sales at Yaya. So there you go.
I mean, I think you naturally have a lot of the skills that work in that environment, though. You are very good at kind of listening and empathizing with people, and you're not a very pushy person who's just like buy this now. So and I think that is probably the right approach. I think the thing that I think is important is we've never tried to sell something to somebody that they didn't need. And we have actually had times where we've turned around to people and said that I just don't think this makes any sense. I know you kind of think that you want to go through a buying process with us, but the reality is this isn't a good fit for you right now, and it's not going to solve your problems. So we've pulled out of things before. All of which I think is just to say that I think if you have that level of authenticity and you are genuinely trying to help people solve problems, it doesn't actually feel weird to do that. It's that's a nice thing. It's a very comfortable thing to do. To be able to kind of offer a solution to something that is bothering someone. I think taking a much more icky salesy approach, it isn't actually something that you need to do, really.
Yeah, I think also just listening to your customers and then figuring out what it is from your product that is solving their problem, and then really tailoring the message to that. I think really helps, rather than just saying like, this is it and this is all the different things it does, and like customizing that kind of pitch a bit more, and focusing on their challenges. I think we're just repeating ourselves now, but it is super, super important, and something that we've found has been key, and ultimately made us feel a bit more natural.
I think if you're a B2B tech founder and you are looking at, how do I kind of cross that bridge and get those first customers, I think it is really important that you do have that mindset of, I'm just going to try and deliver as much value as possible to these people, and it will be beneficial for those people to buy this thing from us. So I have a duty to try and take it out to them, and to pitch my ideas and my beliefs, and to be authentic. Because, and I know we talk about this a lot, but you are talking about people who are not buying you because your company has case studies and a huge track record. They're buying because they believe in your ability to change the way that they work, and they will believe in those things if you believe in them, and you're able to be an evangelist for those things. And you're going to have to be, because I haven't seen it work in any business really where the founders immediately aren't the people who are selling, and you're able to bring in some salespeople who are kind of at arm's length, which is, that's a whole 10 episode podcast series that we're probably not qualified to make, about how you get salespeople to start functioning effectively in a tech startup. But you do have to get people to take a punt on you, and that is ultimately down to their belief in you, your belief in yourself, your own beliefs. And I think it is almost always the case in what we've seen that when people found a business, the first people that come across as their first customers are actually people that they already know and probably have already worked with before. I'm not necessarily talking about, your mates, but your business doesn't have a track record, but you personally do. People who know you and have worked with you know that they can depend on you, and that you can deliver, and that the things that you're saying are genuinely authentic. So those people are more likely to actually part with their cash and to take that punt on you. And that is for them a big decision. But it is one that they should be going into with their eyes open. There is a level of risk associated with that, and they're obviously weighing up that the risk is worth it. So I don't think that if you really do back yourself, you really do believe in the thing that you're bringing there, you shouldn't feel too worried about letting people that you know and have worked with in the past down. But also they have a share of the responsibility for actually kind of taking you on and taking that punt on you. And it's certainly where we started. We started all our first clients were either people who used to employ us or people who used to work with us. And I think that's been the case with most of the businesses that we've worked with, would you say?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I've always feel quite humbled when, we get another piece of work from someone that we worked with, or did a project together, many moons ago. It's just great to kind of, still like they still think about you or still keep you in mind. And I think that's it's really lovely. And I think when we first started the business, I was quite amazed that people were really willing to want to help you. Literally, I didn't think that was would be a thing. They'd be like, oh yeah, you should speak to this person, or you should speak to that person. And I think you'd be surprised how many people that you've come across within your line of work and across your kind of career that you've made an impact on. And yeah, just reach out and say, hey, I'm doing this thing. Be great to have a chat, or just, grab a coffee. Or they might just pick it up anyway if you're putting something out on socials. But, it's amazing how much your network can really kind of kickstart your business, to be honest, like it did ours, and still does to this day. So, yeah, it's.
If you think back to when we very first, in the early days of we actually downloaded a list of everyone we were connected with on LinkedIn, went through that list, identified people who had the potential to be customers, segmented it, and then made sure we were in contact with all those people, had weekly sales calls, and like each had to do updates on how we were getting along with engaging with those people. And it was actually very tactical. This is not a thing that's just going to kind of fall into your lap. And like, I think you actually have to be quite explicit and quite targeted with this stuff. And we certainly were. We were using a CRM right from the start of the business, and tracking potential opportunities and assigning probability, all of that kind of stuff. So there's a whole load of rigor around that, which can feel quite weird when you're talking about people that you know and are potentially friends with. But otherwise, it's probably not really going to happen. Like, I think you do actually have to be quite kind of on it and quite strategic and quite organized about those things. And I think that is actually totally fine. Again, coming back to, you're not just trying to get money off these people. What you're trying to do is actually help them to solve problems, which is a really good thing. So I would say it will probably feel slightly like grubby for a little bit, but once you kind of get the ball rolling, you'll realize it actually isn't, because like there's nothing better than those people saying, wow, thank you so much for like the product that you brought to my business has really like delivered a huge amount of value. And like, if they are, and I think this is the thing to look, as you look through that list of all your contacts, you want to find people who know that you have a good track record and believe in your ability to deliver, but are also those early adopter archetype people who are always the ones who are looking for new ways to do things, new innovations that are going to make their lives easier. And then you're, they're going to be talking to people who are trying to bring them new ideas anyway. You just have the advantage of you're somebody that they trust. But again, it's another transition that can feel a bit weird.
Yeah, I can't say it wasn't weird when we kind of saw a load of friends and ex-colleagues, and sometimes even family members on these lists that we kind of went out to kind of speak to. But I guess another point is really around like those relationships themselves and maintaining them. They're like kind of like friendships. You've got to put the effort in. Like, so even after you do the work, you don't just kind of let it go cold. You kind of make sure that you kind of regularly like get some cadence around meeting up. And I think that's something that we've tried to do as much as possible to keep those kind of relationships going. And I think that's a really, really important point. You've got to kind of nurture them and maintain them, because they're the ones that will kind of lead you to other businesses all the time. So it's really important that it's just not a one hit thing. you keep those relationships strong and try and kind of maintain them as much as possible.
Yeah. I think the just to kind of keep banging the drum about the lead gen stuff as well, is that the more you're able to generate leads, the less weird it feels. And there is obviously the advertising side of this, but what I think, when we think about, you start with the people who you know and who trust you. You basically see yourself as like, how can I help them as much as possible? Like that's definitely the mindset to have. What's the most amount of value I can deliver? How do I make sure that this person who's taking a punt on me is getting like amazing bang for their buck in doing that? And I, like, as somebody said this week, they probably also recognize that they are getting a pretty good deal. That you're probably giving them some sort of discount or working like a little bit harder because you're new and because they are a mate and because they you need to kind of prove yourself. All those kind of things are probably going through their head when they make that decision. I think the next thing is like actually making sure that product is really successful for that person, because that pays them back for their faith in you. But it also means they're then going to say to somebody else that they bump into, you really need to go and speak to these guys about this product, that we bought it, we implemented it, it's been amazing. And then suddenly you're generating leads through referrals, and those people are going to be, potentially not as warm as the first lot of people that you spoke to who already know you directly, but they've come through a personal recommendation, so they're going to be pretty interested. Do a great job for them, like keep the same mentality, and then they'll refer you on to other people, and then you've got a lead generation engine. And of course, there's different types of B2B tech products. In that example, probably talking about quite high value stuff. Whereas, something like Slack is it's easy to sign up and pay, I don't know, $10 a month per user or whatever it is, Slack now. And you need a slightly, different approach to be able to scale a business that is lower value and higher volume. But I bet in the early days, Slack's first customers were people that the founders knew. They were a gaming company, weren't they? And they probably said to other people that they know, we've got this instant messaging thing, will you give it a try? Before they started to attract people that they didn't know. And that is based on no knowledge at all, so it could be totally wrong. But I think it probably,
no, I'm sure you're right.
Sounds plausible, doesn't it?
Sounds plausible. We'll go with that. But yeah, I think yeah, just to add on to that, I think for us, most of our work has come from the US. We don't have an office in the US. We've never had much of a kind of presence there, but we just seem to have had that kind of snowball effect due to referrals and constant kind of testimonials from other people in that kind of B2B fintech space. So it's been brilliant for us, and I'm sure it will be for you. So case studies, really important. Get them to talk about what you did there. Get them to talk about how impactful your product is for their business, and then kind of referrals as much as possible. It's the golden ticket, really, isn't it? so yeah.
And also what you've just described there is that transition from people initially buying from you, your first customers buying from you because of the belief and faith, to people gradually starting to buy from you because you've got case studies and testimonials and track records. And that is also the transition that we always talk about, from going from early adopter customers to a more mainstream audience.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think just to wrap things up a little bit, I think the first thing is probably saying there's a lot of transitioning going on, and you need to just accept that that's going to feel quite uncomfortable. For some people, that might be kind of rebranding yourself and coming up with a new identity where you're not just a individual contributor or part of a team delivering stuff, but you are, in amongst all the other things that you have to be as a founder, now a salesperson, and getting comfortable in your own skin around that. At the same time, treating it as a skill that you're inexperienced in and that you need to actually learn, and that you need to create muscle memory and capability in that space to become comfortable doing those kinds of things. And I think the other thing that we've spoken about is, don't be afraid to go out to people that you know and to ask them to put their faith into you. Believe in your ability to deliver. Stay very focused on, you're not trying to squeeze as much money out of your friends as possible. What you're trying to do is you're trying to use your product and your skills to help them solve problems better than anyone else can. And then make sure you do that. And then if you do that, it will snowball and you'll get referrals, and you'll start to go from early adopter markets to mainstream.
Easy as pie.
Super easy. Okay. On the basis that I am going to dissolve into a puddle of sweat if we don't wrap this podcast up soon, let's call it a day there. Where can people download things from us?
So if you want to hear more stuff, if you liked what you heard and want to hear more stuff around what we're doing at Cult Products in general, please subscribe to this podcast wherever you're kind of listening to it. And also go to cultproducts.yaya.co. We're giving away a really cool product kit, UI product kit. So that's going to help you kickstart your project, we hope. And if you would like to join our community, so what we've been talking about earlier around the cohort of people, you can still do that. So get in touch with us and be part of that kind of process developing. So if you're a B2B project, we want to hear from you. So all the guff and sign up stuff should be in the notes below. So please, have a look at that and like and subscribe.
Very good. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye guys. See you later.